It's a presidential election year in the States. The race couldn't be closer. Barack Obama and the Republican challenger Mitt Romney currently neck and neck in the polls. President Obama's detractors say he has failed to live up to the hopes invested in him, not least by black Americans. And among those sticking by him is the civil rights campaigner Jesse Jackson, who's had his own ambitions for the White House in the past, but he came into the studio recently and we began by talking about music, hip-hop in fact, because many young black people have found an outlet in a culture which is often criticised for being aggressive. But Jesse Jackson told me there is a more positive side to it.
One sees the growth of hip-hop in ways that's truly commendable. For many young people, just as athletics have been a way out, music has become a way out. But for so long, musicians just sang and danced. Here they sing, they dance, they build, they grow, and they have a high degree of political, social consciousness.
Yes.
And that sometimes is frightening because they expose hypocrisy.
Yes.
They expose contradictions, and it's always fascinating to listen to.
So, on the positive side, you've got hugely successful black entrepreneurs. You've got a black president. You started really in public consciousness at the time of Martin Luther King, and you knew him well. What do you think he would say now about the progress and lack of progress of black Americans?
Well, the progress side would be we now have public accommodations. I was arrested trying to use a public library. We're beyond that now. We were killed and beaten trying to get the right to vote. We're beyond that now. Now we have the social progress, but then there's this huge gap between the very wealthy, what's called the 1%, and the 99%. He would decry that. His last act on earth was to organize a poor people's campaign in March to Washington to occupy the space between the Washington and Lincoln memorials to say we're measured ultimately by how we defend the poor and deliver the needy and feed the hungry and set the captive free. Today that too few have too much concentrated wealth, too many are in poverty, too much violence in America, and too many expensive unnecessary wars. He would challenge that cycle.
And do you worry about the polarization of American politics now that seems to have gone alongside that? There's a great deal of anger.
Well, it is, you know, when President Barack Obama won, it was a very redemptive moment for America. I mean, given 246 years of slavery and then 100 years of Jim Crow, for him to win the election, with many white Americans voting for him for the first time, it was a big step forward for America. Then came this huge backlash of attacks on his person. Donald Trump challenged his citizenship, his birthright, which was foolishness, but it captured much of the imagination of the frightened people.
Some people on what in Europe would be called the left are very concerned with President Obama's enthusiasm for drone strikes and so on in Pakistan. They feel that perhaps on foreign policy it's been too hawkish, particularly there.
Well, that is a great concern, but then the fierce way in which we were attacked on 9/11 has left America still traumatized by the threat of Al-Qaeda, the threat of Taliban, the fear of terrorism, the fear of suicide bombers. And so against that context he's operating, we hope that the idea of assassinations and drone attacks will stop.
When you were a presidential candidate, it seemed to many people that the American presidency had more power, perhaps, than it does these days, that the Washington gridlock hadn't tightened quite as much as it has since then.
Well, the gridlock now is ideological. I mean, there are two great ideas in American politics: a more perfect union, for which the Civil War was fought, and states' rights.
Yes.
The states' rights are trying to undermine the federal government once again, 150 years after the Civil War was fought in America. They want to return the rights to the states. When states had the rights, many of us could not vote, or could not use public accommodations, states' rights. And President Barack argues a more perfect union. He's on the Lincoln side of the argument. And I think in the end, he'll prevail because he does have a track record. I mean, we're better off today than we were 4 years ago. And that is a statement he has in his arsenal.
4 years ago, a lot of people, if they didn't actually fall in love with Barack Obama, they felt in love with the idea of Barack Obama. After 4 years of governing, people know him much more as a sort of poised, deliberative, perhaps sometimes even slightly chilly character, much less emotionally open than somebody like Bill Clinton. Do you think America can fall in love with Barack Obama again?
Well, the senator can appreciate his steadfast. He's brought to the office honor. There's no disgrace. He's brought to the office strength. He's brought to the office a keen intellect. He's brought to the office progress. We've gone from going out the back door over the mountains to depression to economic growth again, albeit slow because the stimulus does not correspond to the size of the crisis. In fact, the Detroit, the automotive industry was gone.
Yeah.
It's now #1 again.
Detroit is back.
Detroit is back, and so one sees in his 4 years of service, nearly 4 years, a line of progress and hope, and a line of joy, no disgrace, all dignity. I'm convinced.
Jesse Jackson, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
To you, sir.
Thank you. The Reverend Jesse Jackson, who was talking to me a little while ago, he was in London for a debate about hip-hop culture, which you can see if you're interested on the Versus Google Plus channel on the internet. Now, the Chinese pianist